Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating psychological machinery behind, well, the everyday hypocrisies we all share. We all really like to think of ourselves as perfectly logical, consistent beings. But the truth? Our brains are actually constantly working overtime to hide our own contradictions from us.
Let's kick things off by holding up a mirror and asking a simple, but honestly, pretty uncomfortable question. Why do our behaviors so frequently contradict our own beliefs and values? Like, why do we know something is terrible for us, or just terrible for the world, but we go right ahead and do it anyway? It makes no sense, right?
Well, it turns out this universal feeling of contradiction is totally ancient. It's actually brilliantly captured in Aesop's famous fable, The Fox and the Grapes. You probably know the one. The fox desperately wants this bunch of grapes, but when he realizes he physically can't reach them, what does he do? He immediately decides that, those grapes are probably sour anyway, and he didn't even want them. He completely rationalizes away his failure just to soothe his own anxiety. He couldn't align his reality with his desires, so he simply changed his belief about the reality.
Section 1. Discovering Cognitive Dissonance. To really understand why our brains do this, why we're all kind of like that fox sometimes, we have to look at the groundbreaking work of American psychologist Leon Festinger back in the 1950s. Festinger gave a name to this whole experience: cognitive dissonance. The absolutely crucial point here is that when our ideas, our beliefs, our values, or our actions fundamentally clash, it creates this invisible subconscious psychological discomfort. It's a literal mental stress that our brains desperately want to fix. We naturally crave internal consistency, and the second we lose it, our minds go to work to restore that balance.
And there's this wild story that brilliantly illustrates Festinger's findings. It's about a 1950s Chicago doomsday cult. Festinger actually infiltrated this group, which was led by a woman named Sister Thedra. She had her followers totally convinced that a spaceship was coming to rescue them from a world-ending flood on December 21, 1954. People literally gave away their homes and everything they owned. But when the day arrived, and shocker, no spaceship showed up, they experienced a massive rush of cognitive dissonance. Their beliefs totally crashed into reality. But rather than admit they'd been duped, which, let's be real, would be incredibly painful, they just invented a brand new, comforting belief. They told reporters that their positive vibes had actually persuaded God to prevent the flood. I mean, wow, they resolved their mental stress just by doubling down on the delusion.
Section 2. The Mechanics. How we reduce dissonance.
Now, you don't have to be in a doomsday cult to experience this stuff. It happens in totally mundane ways every single day. Festinger realized that our thoughts and actions basically fall into three types of relationships. First, you've got a consonant relationship, where everything aligns perfectly. Like, if you don't want to get drunk at dinner, you order water. Easy peasy. Second is an irrelevant relationship, meaning wearing a blue shirt has absolutely nothing to do with wanting to stay sober. But the third, the dissonant relationship, that's the troublemaker. This is when you don't want to get drunk, but you order and drink the wine anyway. That inconsistency, that's what sets off our internal alarm bells.
So, to turn off those alarm bells and restore our psychological peace, the source material points out 4 main paths we take to cope. Just picture someone on a diet who just ate a giant sugary donut. Step 1 is definitely the hardest, actually changing the behavior, like saying, I will literally never eat a donut again. Step 2 is justifying it by changing a belief. Well, I'm allowed to cheat on my diet sometimes. Step 3 is adding a new behavior to balance the scales. I'll just spend an extra 30 minutes at the gym today. And step 4, that's flat-out denial. Actually, that donut wasn't even high in sugar. We are constantly cycling through these 4 steps just to keep our mental peace.
Section 3. Real-world application 1. The meat paradox.
Let's see how we can apply these steps to a massive everyday moral conflict known as the meat paradox. This paradox pits 2 very common realities directly against each other. On one side, we have our genuine affection, empathy, and love for animals. We love them. But on the other side, we have the daily, routine behavior of eating them. For a lot of people, recognizing their behavior as a meat eater directly contradicts their values regarding animals, and that creates an intense state of cognitive dissonance.
Since actually changing the behavior, like giving up meat entirely, is really tough for many folks, people employ some brilliant, subconscious mental gymnastics to reduce their discomfort. A lot of people use avoidance and willful ignorance. They simply refuse to think about the realities of the food source. Some use explanations tied to taste, but bacon tastes so good. Or, most fascinatingly, they use what's called motivated cognitions. This means they might suddenly downplay an animal's intelligence or its human-like qualities to make eating it feel morally okay. Basically, they alter their perception of the animal just to justify their lunch.
Section 4.
Real-world application 2. The smoker's dilemma.
Let's shift gears a bit and look at another prime example of cognitive dissonance in action, and this one is played out on a massive societal scale. Back in the 1950s, smoking was ubiquitous. Everybody did it. But then, in 1964, the Surgeon General dropped a major report featuring undeniable epidemiological evidence linking smoking directly to lung cancer. Suddenly, millions of smokers were violently forced to confront the deadly reality of a habit they absolutely loved. The dissonance between "I want to live a long, healthy life" and "I am inhaling cancer-causing smoke every single day" was just massive. Over the next half-century, this science, combined with ad campaigns and taxes, drove a drastic reduction in smoking.
But what about the folks who didn't quit? Researchers looked at surveys of smokers and found they aggressively adopt specific beliefs just to quiet their mental stress. They rely heavily on functional beliefs, telling themselves things like, well, smoking calms me down when I'm stressed, or it helps me concentrate. Or alternatively, they lean into risk-minimizing beliefs, rationalizing that the medical evidence is somehow exaggerated or dropping that classic excuse, hey, you gotta die of something anyway, right? Why not enjoy yourself? They are actively, continuously modifying their cognitions so they match up with their behaviors.
Section 5. Why our brains do it.
So all of this really begs an important question. Why? Why are human beings wired to constantly lie to themselves just to protect their habits? Why is inconsistency so mentally painful for us? To answer that, we have to turn to neuroscience and something called the predictive dissonance model. This model basically frames the human brain as a super sophisticated inference machine. Our brain's primary job is to actively predict incoming sensations and explain the world around us. And crucially, the brain wants to minimize prediction errors. It absolutely hates being wrong, because evolutionarily speaking, being wrong in the natural world can be incredibly dangerous.
So, when we encounter information that completely contradicts our beliefs, we experience a state of negative affect, basically bad feelings. Brain scans actually show the left frontal cortex lighting up as we scramble to resolve this. Our brains have literally evolved to selectively ignore contradictory information. But why? Well, it's to prevent what computer scientists call overfitting. We filter out dissonant data to protect our overarching working model of the world from being completely thrown into chaos by a single error or just one piece of bad news. The dissonance is essentially a defense mechanism to keep our worldview intact.
Which leaves us with a fascinating, and maybe slightly terrifying question to end this explainer on. We've seen how cult members, meat eaters, and smokers all justify their realities. But when you step back and look at your own daily habits, your own strongly held beliefs, and the information you maybe choose to ignore, how is your brain currently tricking you, right now, just to keep the peace?